Everything. So once James gives me the thumbs up, we'll start going so no one misses the start. Been another busy week in the studio. So golf season kicking off, Players Championship on. The year's really kicking off. It's kind of amazing how quickly it gets there. We always think time, funnily enough, doesn't go any different amounts of time every year, but every year goes quicker. I think I'm just getting old. So as requested, welcome to the Friday Live. As we've done in previous weeks, done drivers and fairway woods, we'll be hybrid testing today. So in this last week or so, just got the last couple of heads through, so managed to get the Srixon hybrid head in, which is good. So going to run through looking at different head style. I mean, hybrids in particular, more than other bits of the bag, are more sensitive to head style change. I think as a club, they tend to be most players' favourite club or least favourite club, and there is a very good reason for that. Certainly when fitting in the studio, what we really notice is the really finite differences that make a club work or not work. So whilst the weight changes in shafts, in woods, irons, fairway woods, wedges, it's applicable throughout the whole set. Hybrids, and I don't know why, there's no physics logic that I can put to it that makes sense for it, but they are remarkably sensitive to finite changes in shaft, weight and balance point, tiny little changes in head weight. But in particular, actually head style for how you deliver the club and what kind of flight you're looking for. So, a player who's a little bit more iron-like and more on top of it, then the smaller, more compact head's going to get into the bottom of the ball and strike a little better. If you're a little shallower through, a slightly more wood-like head with a lower centre of gravity, it's going to make sure the ball gets up. And what you'll find with hybrid heads, and what we find is that if you get the wrong head style, you're barely ever going to get any consistency of contact. It's either going to feel like it's a little bit thin or the ball gets high up the face. You're not going to feel that solidity of strike. And so that's one of the really critical things. So, so you've got the hybrid heads all on the side there. I personally don't play a hybrid. I've always been a long iron player. I've got a driving iron in the bag. Going to use the same shaft in all these heads, as close on the base lofts as we can. So they're either the 18 or 19 degree base head lofts, going to be in the standard settings. I'm just going to run through the heads and take you through what we're looking for. So I'll start with the Titleist line. Again, a very neutral start point. We'll start off with Titleist TSR2. And any questions as per all the other lives, any questions, just fire them in. James will stop me and ask through. So Titleist with all of their range have gone a little bit bigger. The frame shape of the heads is all a little bit deeper. They're slightly kind of more round. They've deepened out the back of them a little bit more. So there's definitely a bigger footprint to them. Like the TSR1, when we come onto that, is kind of like an old fairway wood in terms of head style, head size and shape. What does that mean? Well, it means that the centre of gravity sits a little deeper and further back, and generally means that it just picks the ball up a little bit more easy. So TSR2, again, a little bit deeper, but still a kind of a very, it's often one that I would go to start with because it's a mid-launch, mid-spin. It doesn't really overly influence flight. So we'll start off with this one. So because it's a slightly deeper shape than some, it generally suits a slightly shallower delivery. So if someone's not heavily down onto the ball, would look to use this head as a base point. So I'll get a couple of shots through, look at the data and explain what we're looking for. I may just hit that well. So I will quite have my head on that one. So in terms of from this sort of loft in the bag for effectively kind of this is 2 iron, 5 wood loft. We're looking for, well, it depends what you're looking for into the shot type. For a shot that lands with a little bit of control, I'd be looking for the spin rate to be kind of high 3000s, around the 4000 mark. So if you're not getting the spin rate there, then there's not that kind of stopping power when it lands. So for me, again, the one salient point to any of the data, this is going to be relevant to my swing, that where the spin rates change and launch angles change is still going to track player to player across, but just some heads will suit me better than others. That will differ golfer to golfer. So TSR2, kind of upper mid launch, so launch angle for me there, 14.9 degrees, spin 4.3. It's a bit of a softer flight, so it's sort of upper mid in terms of trajectory. And that's where this series is a little bit more forgiving than TSI and a little bit higher launching. Spin stays pretty much in the same vein. Actually, TSI2, if anything, was a little bit punchier in terms of flight than we thought it would be. But as a club head for someone who wants a slightly more wood-like head, good bit of forgiveness, and an upper mid ball flight, something that doesn't stop the ball getting airborne, it's a really good head. It's not really, the 3 and the 2 types are not drawbarst heads. Very, very neutral in terms of setup. And then obviously you've got the versatility from the hosel settings to be able to fine tune that in. But certainly the kind of head you'd look for just to get a little bit of extra launch, a little bit of extra spin. And I'll put the TSR 3 head on now, just to give a comparison to that. To say any questions at all, just fire them in. And this bit of the bag really is one where I think the guys would all say there isn't an absolute right or wrong. You must have certain flights or numbers. It really depends on you're filling a job role for this club. So it's really all about making sure that the club does what the player wants it to do. And I've just noticed there's a weight missing out of this I'm going to put in now. Some players are using it just to advance the ball up a fairway, so you might want a lower flight, lower spin for more total distance. You might be using the club as one to fly to a green and land soft if you need to attack longer par 3s, longer par 4s, par 5s and want the height. Then you're going to look for a different setup in order to get that spin up and launch up. So it really is a case of, from a fitting standpoint, we're looking to tailor the club selection to the course that you're playing and the job role that you're looking for the club to fill. So there is no one size fits all in this bit of the bag. Very, very player specific. So, right. So TSR3 is like the 2 and the 1, all of the types, it's just a little bit bigger in terms of frame shape. Noticeably tighter shape, a little bit smaller than a TSR2, but definitely larger, definitely visually a little bit more user-friendly than TSI3, which really was quite a compact iron-like shape. So you can definitely see a little bit more of the face than last year as well. But being a little bit smaller generally suits someone who's a little bit more on top of it and squeezes it a touch more. So I'd be expecting to see the flight come down. So the TSR3 loft is 3 hybrid is 19 and the 3 hybrid in the 2 is 18. So see where those flights change. So slightly duller sound, a little bit of a quieter contact. Just knock the launch angle down a little bit. I got that a little bit heel side. I just want to do one more with that. But I guess actually with the loft differential, we're not going to see quite as much change in that flight as if they're exactly the same loft, but certainly a much more solid feel. So much more transition off the irons rather than the woods. The TSR2 is a bit of a transition off the woods. Little toe side, yeah, so you can see spin slightly toe side but spin down a little bit more, and again that's certainly one thing I'd expect. Launch angle is not going to change too much because this is the higher loft, but the spin's coming down a little bit, so you're looking for this head relative to the TSR2 is going to provide mid-launching. It's not a low launching head particularly, but a little bit of a stronger spin. And I think there's a question.
Couple of questions in. Dave Hurley, welcome again. I'm using a T200 2-iron, mainly for tee shots, carrying around the 230 yards, then roll out. Should I change to a hybrid? Any advantage or disadvantage?
So one element, this bit of the bag, it's hard without seeing your swing. It is hard to say whether you should play one thing or another. Certainly, if you're hitting your 2-iron that far, your likely usage, depending on where you are, because we've had people tuning in from Scottsdale before. So certainly within UK, you're more likely to require at that sort of distance. If you can hit your 2-iron that far, it's going to be more likely a strategic teeing off club, maybe the odd par 5 approach. Ultimately depends on what pitch of flight you're looking for. At the same loft, a 2-iron or driving iron is going to come out lower spin and flatter, and a hybrid's going to kick it up more, and a 5 would even more flat launch and spin than the hybrid. So it's what shot suits where you're playing it most often. So for me, it's a 2-iron because it's a teeing off club or the odd par 5 shot. I play a bit of links golf every now and then. I like seeing the flight coming in lower. If I was playing in or if I played someone like I guess a London club, there's water around greens, par 5s are going into, I might well go to a hybrid or a fairway to maximise carry. So if it's working well, then it's really just a question of, are you missing out on a softer landing shot? If not, then it's generally going to play more of a strategic tee shot. It's just not a definite one way or other.
Another question from Niels. What are your thoughts on hybrids versus woods? They compete for the same spot or spots in the bag.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been notable, and I think we'll see this with some of the other heads, is that hybrids, what we've seen on tour is more players going back to a 5-wood. Now, part of that reason is they're playing longer courses, they're having to play them into par 5 greens more often, so they want the height. Hybrids for the top end speed players tend to be a lot of them tend to be a little drawbar, so a lot of low handicappers or tour players have not really liked them that much over the years. But I think it's a mixture of flight consistency. So for a lot of players, a shorter shaft on the hybrid is going to give you a little bit more directional consistency. If you're very shallow into the ball and you need height, then the fairway wood's going to flight it higher and get you more carry. But then the advantage of the shorter shaft on the hybrid is left-right dispersion. So it's a question of what's more important. If where you play you've got a lot of long holes that need the height and need maximised carry and maximised stopping power, then a lofted wood's going to do more of both than the hybrid. But some players suffer on dispersion. So there are lots of shades of grey in this bit of the bag. I think generally if you're replacing a long iron, the hybrid's absolutely going to be the way to go, 90% of the time. But we're seeing a lot of sets now stop at a 5 iron, we'll put a 4 hybrid in and then 2 woods. We're doing that more than we used to do a 3 woods, 2 hybrids and then the 5 iron. So, but heads have got lower spin, balls have got lower spin, so the importance of that extra height's become more important. So, yeah, it's really shot type dependent, height dependent. If the higher shot's more important, then the higher shot's going to be a fairway wood. So going the last one on the tightest range, the TSR1, like I said earlier, very much a small, like old school fairway wood size. We don't need to go back 15, 20 years. There are a lot of fairway woods that were barely this size. So it's really stretched the weight back. This one, the starting loft with the TSR1 is 20. I've lofted it down just to get it a bit closer to these. This is a head that we're going to do quite a lot of this year for moderate speeds because of where it gets that flight up. The frame weight of the head's a little bit lighter as well, which helps with that too. So what I'm expecting to see is this to pop this up quite a bit more. And so it's quite an interesting shape because the face is nice and flat and square, but you've then got a good bit of depth behind it. Yeah, so you can see where launch angle is on that. Spin's not gone through the roof, but that's launched 3-4 degrees higher. I'm just going to hit one more just to make sure I'm not helping that in the air. I don't want it to be my swing. Yeah, so I tried to make sure I stayed on top of that a little bit more. You can still see where that launch angle's at 16 degrees. So there's a good amount more launch out of this. And so I've used the 20 and lofted it down to get it down to the 19 nearer the TSR3 head. And that's really kicking the ball up in the air. So, and actually, just to go back to the last question, fairway wood or hybrid, this one is a bit of a hybrid of the two. Hybrid length, but a very much an old fairway wood style head, and that really is going to help with the launch angle. So, a head that we're going to do an awful lot for of those in sort of moderate speeds who might want to replace a 4 or even a 5 iron who struggle to get the launch. A really good head for getting launch angle up, and still quite a kind of classic, simple look as well. So I'm going to go to one that will be a little bit different. I'm going to go with the Paradigm head. So we're going to the Callaway next. So this is a head we'd use for a very different spin profile. So I'll keep the 18 in the 18 degree setting though. This is the Paradigm, not the Paradigm X. So the Callaway heads have been very, very strong hitting over the years. Quite low spin, real kind of powerful heads, even going back to kind of Razor X and things like that, going back several generations. They're always quite strong. So quite quite a simple shape. Actually, not a bad looking head. I hope my hand's not in the way there. Quite a kind of clean head shape. That you can really see the face, you can see the grooves there. Little bit more kind of toe oriented in terms of weighting, but I think a slightly better looking head than they've done in the last few years. I think one of the problems for Callaway is all their hybrids have looked the same the last few years, so it's actually been quite hard to differentiate between them. But this one's certainly a better look. A little bit more of a rounded sole than the Titleist, a little bit flatter, which in principle, different lies, ball above, below your feet should help very slightly. But a nice sort of what I call a mid-size head. But I'm expecting, famous last words, expecting to see this come out with noticeably a little bit less spin. So, strong contact, yeah. So now one might say, okay, the last heads were 19 degrees, I can loft this up as well, but we can see launch angle down at just under 13, but the spin's down at 3,400. Now there are going to be scenarios where this is a great head. If you're someone who hits a bit of a higher, spinnier flight, bit of a cut, with the hosel system you can put it into a drawbars, but with this head, that'll really bring the spin down. So I'll do one more. You can see the kind of yardage on that. It's really, really gone. I mean, that's out there at, totaling out at 240. Now, for me and what I would want this club to do if I was putting it in the bag, I'd like that flight up a little bit more. It's a bit of a cannon, but there are a lot of players who, again, as a distance fairway club, really very, very strong, very, very efficient. So I'll do one more there. It's got a real sense of speed off the face, that. So again, a little more launch than that shot, but the spin's still at 3,500, and that's 900 revolutions difference than that TSR3. Now one could maybe rein that back for a slight change in loft. Certainly 600 or 700 revs difference. So for someone to give a really kind of powerful flight, good amount of forgiveness, the Paradigm X will be a little bit more forgiving again, slightly bigger footprint. But the Callaway heads, the Paradigm series heads are really quite a strong flight. So to get something, to go for a hybrid head where you're looking for distance, very, very strong product. Quite forgiving. Has a nice sense of power coming off the face. That kind of sound and feedback are really quite nice. So I'm going to go to one of their, again, a very different head shape. This one's into the Apex series, Apex Pro. Much more iron-like club head, this one. So I'm going to go through these kind of brand by brand just so as we go through. So again, any questions as we go through, please just fire them in. The Apex, the Pro series, a much more compact head. So a real kind of iron-like club head on this one. This is something that really, you wouldn't be looking for an overt amount of forgiveness from this club head. This is all about getting that iron-like setup, really a long iron replacement, but for a stronger hitter. This one, again, we'll see where the launch and spin come out, but there's not an awful lot back across the face on this one. Callaway always been good for ball speed with the hybrids, but I think what we're likely to see, I said again, famous last words, likely to see a similar kind of strong spin. This is a slightly weaker loft. This is the 20. Because of how strong they tend to come out, you generally need a bit more loft with the Callaway heads than you do others to get trajectory. Again, it's a really strong hit off that head. Yeah, so a couple of degrees more to get to 20 degrees to get that 4.2, but again, relative to the Titleist heads, it's that degree and a half less launch. So this sort of head, when you pull the weight closer to the face, you're going to pull launch angle down. That's sort of a general rule of thumb. So that one's kept a little bit of spin on there, maybe probably being the 20 rather than the 18. The 18 will bring that spin down to the 3000s again. So for me to get the same flight on this head as the TSR2 from a spin point of view at 18 degrees, I've got to go 2 degrees higher. So these are some of the things with the hybrid heads. You can't just pick up a loft based on what you've used before and expect a similar flight. They all really change around. But this is very much an iron player's hybrid head. It's really, you're looking for a bit more ball speed off the face than a long iron, and probably a little bit of a higher launch. But really, it's a bit more forgiving than a driving iron, a little bit higher flighted, but that's about it. It's not going to be a massive step change. It's a sort of partial move up from the irons rather than into it's an iron hybrid, not a wood hybrid, would be the best way to describe it. So generally, stronger swinger's head, someone who compresses it, hits down a little bit more, but not as long as you're not looking for vast forgiveness. It's a long iron replacement for that. So I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to go to a head, a bit of a different brand, the Mizuno STZ or STZ hybrid, literally just launched. So the driver fairway has just come into the studio as well. It's again, hybrids, something that Mizuno haven't shouted about. They've always been quite, I think the best way to describe them, be inoffensive in terms of performance. They've been neutral launch, neutral spin. Obviously, they've got the driving irons that people know them for. With the iron side of the brand being the better known brand. The hybrid-wise, their Fly High CLK, Fly High series have always been actually a very solid performing club. I think it's almost where, from a marketing point of view, they haven't shouted as hard the last 5-6 years. It's sort of been lost a little bit, but they are making a bit more noise about the 230 series now. They've got that same Cortec chamber tech about getting a bit of rebound, getting rid of extra ball speed there as on the driver, and a very classic, uniform, very balanced shape to the head. Some of the Fly Highs in the past have been a little bit more rounded, a little more bulbous. This is actually a very, very clean, simple, clean shape. So again, this one 19 degrees in the standard loft. Yeah, it's very traditional shape down by the board. So it's a little more compact than the Titleist, a little more compact than the standard Paradigm head. So for somebody who doesn't want a big club head behind the ball, yeah, nice, very simple shape. Running board bird on the top as well for alignment. Got that little toe, so I'll do one more than that. But partly that strike, so I'm going to do one more of that. But definitely a noticeably higher launch. I mean, really, really kick that up. So if I can actually get club face on ball rather than chunk it. Probably overcompensated a little bit there. So kind of dragged onto it a little bit, but so where I've knocked the flight down a little bit more, that I think if I were to get slightly more neutral contact, we're back in a very similar place to that TSR2 in terms of launch, maybe slightly lower spin, but a really, I guess goes back to previous ones, very neutral sort of mid launch, mid spin. I think without wishing to, and that's not to disparage it, that's not to say it doesn't do things as well as other brands actually. Maybe not quite as hot sound-wise. It's a bit of a duller sound off the face. Maybe not quite as hot in ball speed as say the Callaway, but it's not. That's not what it's designed for. This is very much more get a bit of launch, get a bit of spin, know what the ball's going to do when it lands. But I think the more compact head shape and maybe less kind of tinny sound, there are going to be a lot of players that might like that again as a progression off the irons. It doesn't sound too clicky and too wood-like, but gives that little bit more of a wood-like ball flight. So. It's just a very mid, which actually is no bad thing, because for a lot of the products now we do struggle to get, the last couple of years we really struggled to get enough flight and spin on hybrids. There's been a real kind of distance chase, and there are more heads now this year that are starting to create a little bit more flight, which is really nice. But that one, yeah, very, very kind of mid. Ping G430. So any questions we've got, send them in. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to hybrids, anything at all. That any questions you've got, we'll do our best to answer as we go. So you're going to go to one that's very, very definitely going to be a very strong seller this year, the Ping G430. Actually, I'm going to go back half a sentence. I think the Mizuno head in terms of how to hit it, erring a hair more towards an iron-like style, slightly more of a squeeze. I think the Paradigm, a little bit more of a sweep. The Apex Pro, very much as kind of a trap and iron-like, and the Mizuno just sort of more towards irons than woods. So yeah, Ping G430, the 410, the 425 are both great heads. 4 410 was suited someone who is a little more iron-like with it, and the 425 a bit more wood-like. The 430 is more of a progression of the 425. They've very slightly lightened the crown. If I hold that up, might be able to pick up just a slight kind of carbon weave on the top, so saving a little bit of weight in the crown. Same very kind of neutral, even shape 425, maybe slightly cleaner shape, but they've got a little bit more weight lower down into the face. That face marking in particular, that the white line being in the U, it really shows you the bottom part of the face, so you can really see all the loft on the head, which I think that's part of the success of it. It looks a very user-friendly head. It doesn't look a head that's going to be difficult to flight. And certainly early testing with this head, getting that extra little bit of launch angle, these have been really, really good at. So I'm expecting to see this launch a little higher than that Mizuno head. It's got a nice sound to it. Little bit of a poppy sound off the face. So not vastly more than Mizuno head, but a little bit more spin. Again, generally speaking, it's fairly neutral, but again, owes a little bit more to someone who's shallower through and collects the ball off the top. Again, that's a little low on the face. I'll do one more there. Just towed that to hell and back, but semi-ignore that one. But definitely not a head for someone who's heavily on top of it, really. But if you're looking for something that just gets a little bit more flight, again, it's mid-launch, maybe mid to upper mid on spin, but very, very easy head to get airborne. Really nice, kind of like the Titan, very nice sort of flat sole shape. So it seats behind the ball really well. And one of the aspects of this with the hosel position, it allows you to flatten the lie a little bit. So you've got, the standard lie and loft, higher loft, lower loft, but also the 180 flip. For a lot of brands, that creates an upright lie. For Ping, that actually flattens the lie down. So for someone who doesn't like to see the toe sit up too much, you've got that flatter setting that can make it seat a little bit nicer and look a little bit neater behind the ball. So again, all around, again, upper mid launch, someone who's better, a little bit more of a picker off the ball. I think if you would like to hear a bit of a pop, hear a bit of speed, see a little bit of flight. Again, very, very good head, but very, very consistent across the face. I mean, I nearly missed that one. Actually, it's still got 210 through the air. So that was a real rotter of a swing. But unsurprisingly, so through the progressions from 410, 425 to this is probably I would say 425 was a little lower spin than this, a little bit hotter in terms of distance. But this is probably a slightly more rounded performance from a trajectory and a height point of view. So we're not having to loft this up as much as we used to. If anything, we're tending to loft it down a touch more. So I hope hybrids are a little bit different than the others in terms of how they set up, but I hope this sort of information is useful. And again, it will tailor whatever we do to what people want to see. So anything you want to see us do or test or any ideas, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to listen to what you guys want to see us do. I think one of the things that's quite interesting is that going through these is it's the distance variations. We're looking kind of 20 yards top to bottom from solid hits at the same sort of loft. So hence this bit of the bag, very, very key to pick the right head for the right flight for the distance and the job that you wanted to do.
Question from Niels. Love the comments on suitable angle of attack between the hybrids. Could you talk a bit about which ones are more suited to higher, mid, lower swing speeds?
Swing speeds, okay.
Higher, mid and lower swing speeds.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to categorise from a swing speed point of view, because there are action elements that come into it as well, but if we're going on swing speed, generally speaking, the lower the club speed, the more help with launch you're going to need. And this kind of runs across the board, whether it's driver, fairway, hybrid irons, is that if you have lots of club speed and ball speed, then the ball's going to get plenty of height anyway. So if the only thing that changed was ball speed, for every mile an hour extra you've got in terms of ball speed, it peaks higher and later. So the more ball speed you've got, the less help you need getting it airborne. So generally speaking, a higher speed player is going to suit either a lower spin or a lower launching head to keep that flight under control. And then the lower club speed players need more launch to get it to the peak of the flight, because at lower club speeds you're not going to generate as much spin. So that's the other differentiating factor, is that the more speed you've got, the more friction across the face, the more spin. So that's where, for lower speed players, something like that TSR1 is going to be a brilliant head, because it's going to get the ball up to the top of the flight quickly. It's why you rarely see that, rarely if ever, going to see that style of head out on the Pro Tours. They're going to be playing more like that Apex Pro hybrid or the TSR3 head, or I mean, that Mizuno might well get played. Things like the Stealth 2 Plus that we're about to come on to, those ones, because they're not looking to, they're wanting a bit of help with flight, but they're not wanting loads of help get it airborne. They're looking to get a bit of flight and spin over a long iron and a bit of forgiveness. So yeah, higher club speed, more likely more compact head and lower launching head. Lower club speed, more wood-like, higher launching, as a very broad generalisation. And then the same would apply for the more you hit down it and attack it, the steeper you are, more compact head, because that's gonna put more action on it and more spin. And the less your angle of attack, the more shallow you are and sweep it. More wood-like head, because the centre of gravity gets lower and further back, and that can collect the ball and get it airborne a little bit more. So, tailor-made. We've got the Stealth 2. So these have always been tailor-made. Oh God, you go back to the RBZ series, and then onwards from there. The hybrids and rescues have been exceptionally strong for them. As with the Mizuno, you could see there with that pocket, they've got the speed pocket, and they've got the Cortex chamber on the Mizunos, designed to do the same thing, designed to give a little bit and pop some speed back into the face. They're not really going to change this Formula One head style very much. A little bit more kind of sort of mid to compact mid in terms of shape. Little bit of composite in the crown on this one now, so a lot of them are trying to get lighter crowns, lower centre of gravity, just to make them more playable. These heads have been exceptionally strong for ball speed across the years. One of the things that TaylorMade have done in the last couple of models is put that little line on the top. Now, serves two purposes. One is it can help from an alignment point of view, because it gives a bit of clarity between the crown and the face. If it's all black, then so from that angle, if it's all black, you might lose that definition. So it helps just from a bit of alignment point of view. It can also help the face look a little bit shallower, because you're seeing effectively your eyes drawn to the bottom edge of that line, so you're just seeing that part of the face rather than the whole crown. So it can make the head look a little bit shallower as well, and therefore a bit more playable. So the sort of standard Stealth 2 head, yes, a really very, very small progression in performance. Obviously advances in face materials and thick, thin, weight positioning, strengthening the frame of the head just so all the energy goes back into the ball. But the base formula from going back to all those RBZ hybrids has not really changed that much, which is why they've done such a good job over the years with it. It's a very consistent performing product. So what has changed, they've become a little bit more playable across the face, but they've always been strong in terms of spin. Just roll that over a little bit. I'm going to do one more because I've turned that over slightly. But on that shot, one of the things we can see is the spin's down, 3-6. So we're kind of into that kind of paradigm spin level. So, and this is a 19-degree head. So they're a great feeling head. To be fair to TaylorMade, it's a really well balanced head, and what I mean by that is the head kind of stays really stable through impact. It doesn't feel like there's much vibration, twisting, but as you can see there, this is not a head that's going to flight it up. It's the standard Stealth 2 model. If you want more flight, you've got the HD, which is going to pick it up a little bit more. So it's got a little bit more loft, a degree more loft, I think, per head. I might double check that. But as a head, it's designed to kick it up a little bit more and spin it more. This one's a distance machine. This is an absolute cannon. It's good ball speed, but it's relative to the other heads, it's a little lower launch, but it's a strong spin. So this is a head where, again, if you hit that little bit of a weaker shot, tend to pop it up and maybe hit a little bit of a cut to it, then this is a head that's going to work well for you. It's what TaylorMade have done very, very well for the last, I don't even know how many years, 10 to 15 years. It's a product that they will have had a very, very high proportion of sales in this category because it's just a club that they've done well over and over and over again. So, you know, from a stronger shot point of view, great head, really, really great head. It doesn't have the adjustability, and I think that's one of the things that, so from a tech point of view, there are two arguments on fairway woods and hybrids. From the club designer's point of view, they want to save as much weight here as possible to redistribute inside the head, because if you weight up the hosel, you can make it a bit drawbars, but you're losing the ability to position weight around the head. So what we see is the Stealth 2 versus the Stealth Plus. The Stealth Plus 2 has the adjustable hosel to it, so that allows you to put loft up, put loft down, affect the lie, face angle a little bit, because this is designed to be dialed in a little bit more. Stealth 2 is all about maximising speed and distance. So one of the things they did a few years back, a couple of series ago, is, depending on how clear this comes out, you can see the ridges in the hosel there, hopefully. So what that is they've thinned it out to save weight. So on this head, they're saving as much weight as they can in the hosel, as much weight as they can in the face, to redistribute around the head. So not putting an adjustable sleeve in helps them to maximise the performance of that head from a yardage point of view. And we saw this with the Sim 2 Max series. They produced a fitting head for the fixed hosel that had an adjustable hosel to it, and the performance was noticeably different. So it really does make a difference of when they do them with or without an adjustable hosel.
A question from Chris Parker. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your reviews. What do you think of using a Callaway Super Hybrid number 2 instead of a 3-wood?
So the Super Hybrid was one that was really done for US market, or US and Asia. So it's not a hybrid head that actually Europe stocked. That was really designed for max speed, hence the kind of the super moniker to it. It's really designed just to actually cannon it out there. And one of the things for some players just, it's a bit like, you know, some players don't like hybrids, some players can't hit a driver, some players aren't great with fairway woods. What the Super Hybrid in the 2H, I think that was a 17-degree head, you've got the option to loft it down 1 degree to get it to 16, 16 and a half. But what it does give you is the shorter shaft that the fairway wood doesn't give you. So ultimately, if that gives you a more consistent strike, technically the club speed you lose from the shorter shaft of the fairway wood, if you're striking it cleaner and better with the shorter shaft of the hybrid, then your ball speed proportionally increases. So you might make up, or you will make up, some of that loss of speed from the club length through better contact, but you're probably going to get a more reliable ball flight as well. So the overall to it is it's absolutely, it's going to be a great option for some players, because the shorter shaft's more forgiving, the shorter shaft makes it potentially easier to get the middle of the face on the back of the ball and to get a better strike. In principle, it helps with the dispersion pattern. What you will get relative to a wood at the same loft is it will bring that flight and spin down. So again, it's unlikely to be a head that you're going to play as an approach shot to greens to fly it and land it soft, but as a head to replace a fairway wood and get as close as possible to one without getting the same shaft length, potentially a great option. The downside is they didn't stock it over here. It was solely US and Asia. So the Stealth 2 Plus, so this one, like the TSR 3, except this is more like the TSI 3 shape. It's that little bit more compact, sort of tighter shape, a little bit more toe weighted. So this is not a drawbast head, and this is really geared very much at an iron player who's wanting a little more forgiveness, probably slightly more forgiveness than the Apex Pro, possibly. A little bit more depth to it, but with that adjustability, you can, something that an iron player can really dial in as more of a kind of, say, a hybrid club, a little bit more flight, a little bit more playability. It's not slow off the face, but definitely responds to more of a trap. So going back to that, what player style does this suit? If you're someone who gets down and kind of squeezes and take a bit of a divot with your mid to long irons, this is the kind of club head you should be looking at, because reason being, the further the weight is back from the face, the steeper you are onto it, the further that weight's back, it kind of misses the contact. It kind of goes under the ball, so you can end up getting that kind of high, loopy, lobby flight that feels like you strike it right up the top of the face. Similarly, if you sweep it off and you need that deeper CG, if you were to play this kind of club head, it's going to feel like it strikes low on the face because the centre of gravity won't get under it. You've got to get the centre of gravity down to the bottom of the ball with this kind of head. So very much suits that little bit more of a squeeze and an iron-like shot. Quite a little bit more rounded than they used to be, I think, and an interesting pattern. There's the composite weave. There's almost a kind of a bit like the old table tennis bat kind of dimple effect on the top of this, which it means nothing in terms of performance, but there are going to be players that draws their eye a little bit. So we have had people say, I prefer it to be smooth. Now there'll be a reason for it. It'll be to do with the more, if they try and smooth that off, they're probably adding layers of paint and adding layers of weight. In the same way like with the F1 cars this year, they're not painting them. They're leaving them black because that adds weight. So going down to those kind of details, that's how much they're trying to control where the weight goes. Every gram helps. So let's give this a, and this one's the 19.5. So their base soft is a little higher than some. But reason for that is because it's a lower launching head. So launching down under 12 degrees there. So angle of attack, I react a little bit to this. I've got a little bit steeper on this probably because I know I've got to. If I just shallow that a little bit, that one. So as a head, it's not a crazy low spin head. I mean, that one was maybe a little bit lower on the face. So the spin's popped a little bit. This isn't a head that's really going to knuckle spin off, unlike the standard Stealth 2. This one will retain a little bit of spin. It just gives a bit of forgiveness over a long iron. That was hit a little bit better. So yeah, a little bit more launch. I didn't bottom that one. And I've reacted a bit and shallowed the path, shallowed angle of attack a little bit more. Because I get that little bit later and laggy with my hands. That's where, for me, this sort of head style will produce probably a slightly more controllable spin. But as you can see from that one, it's not like, and again I'll go back to the Paradigm because it is strong on spin, it's not like that one or the standard Stealth where it's taking that spin off, it's letting it retain a little bit of spin, just in a more compact profile.
Matt Batchelor, thanks for the question. How has the hybrid technology changed over the last 10 or so years? Manufacturers always speak about the new driver tech, but have hybrids had similar levels of development?
Yeah, very good question. Driver's the sexy club they all want to focus on because that's the one everyone really wants to. So they're going to focus their tech comments on the driver, but it's similar to the F1 comment. F1 tech filters back to road cars, and that's the same thing. The driver tech filters, they're always going to go in the driver first. It's the biggest head, it's the way you can move the weight around the most. And that's where, because it's the one that goes the furthest, they focused all the noise on. But all that filters back to hybrids, even into irons in certain cases as well. That development on face thickness, face materials. So for example, TaylorMade don't use the composite face on a fairway or a hybrid because they can't save enough weight by it. They would if they could save enough weight, but because the face is so much smaller, there's not the gain versus the titanium faces that they're currently using. So if it were going to make a difference on these clubs, they would be using it. But essentially, the technology of stiffening the frame up, getting the CG lower, making the face as light as possible, all those principles that they're trying to incorporate into drivers, other than maybe just not making them quite as low spin. So they are, the lighter they can make certain parts, like the hosel on the Stealth 2, the more they can control where that centre of gravity goes. They're not forced into putting it in certain places. So the more they improve certain areas, the more they can control what the club does. So there are definite face thickness progressions that come from drivers. There are definite crown weight progressions that come from drivers. So Ping, the LST has a composite crown. The fairway and the hybrid have composite crowns. They've saved more weight in the crown on the fairway and the hybrid than they have on the driver. So the drivers are very much at that, getting right to the far end of within the tech and the materials they're currently using of what's doable. And there's actually been far more progression on fairways and hybrids in the last 5 years than there has with drivers. It's just the big beast that they all talk about is the driver, and saying that's gone into irons as well. So I think you're going to see, we're now seeing players coming in after 5-6 years, and so like my own drive, I've got an M4. I'm still going to struggle to beat that this year, but my Epic Flash Sub-Zero 3 wood, I can beat that with the new models in terms of consistency across the face, where I'm struggling to gain anything really other than a little bit of forgiveness on my M4 because the flight's good and the ball speed's been limited for 20 years. There aren't the same limitations on construction and regulations on ball speed on fairways and hybrids because it's not the club you're looking to hit as far as possible. So some of the design elements mean that the brands aren't going to go as far, but it means actually they can do sometimes a little bit more from a tech point of view with those heads than they can with drivers now.
Question from Aidan, playing half-inch under, should you add a certain amount of grams to the head, or is it more on what feels good?
Technically both. I mean, certainly absolutely what feels good. If it feels good, it's probably set up quite well. But as a general rule of thumb, if you take a half-inch off, you're going to drop 2 to 3, 2.5 to 3.5 swing weight points. Now, it doesn't go to say that if you're taking that much off, you've got to replace it all. Because swing weight is not an absolute scale. It's a little bit fluid. So chances are, if you're taking a half-inch off, you're going to need to add a couple of grams back to the head just so that you don't lose the feel of the club head. And this is why a 19-degree hybrid is lighter than the 22-degree hybrid, in the same way that your 4-iron's lighter than your 5-iron, lighter than your 6-iron, because they're designed to be at slightly shorter lengths. So there is going to be some kind of compensation in weight that you're likely to have to put back into the head. But it's not a guaranteed. So if it feels a little bit, if you're playing a club that feels a bit unwieldy, so there are some pretty long hybrids out there. So some of the 19 degrees are nearly 41 inches, 40.5, 41 inches. We'd generally be looking at get them down to between 40 and 40.5 as the longest length. So if it feels a bit unwieldy, it could be a mixture of length and it could be a little bit heavy. So first thing is shorten it. If you feel like you lose the head a little bit, then build the weight back up. But chances are, yes, chances are you're going to need to add a little bit of weight back after shortening it. So moving on to next brand, Cobra. So this one's the King Tech. So as you can see on the sole here, there are 3 weights in the sole, which technically gives you that little bit more versatility to move the weight into the toe, into the heel, split it. So if you split it, technically it's maximum forgiveness. So there are 2 12s and a 2 gram. So you're shifting around a reasonable bit of weight in the head. So that gives a little bit of versatility. Obviously you've got the adjustable hosel as well. The Tech series, I think, is one that we probably underrepresented a little bit last model. As a head, it's a bit, I can't speak for the other fitters, from my own experiences last couple of years. I kind of forgot how good it was, actually. But again, where it loses out to some because it's designed to retain a little bit more flight and spin. This isn't just a distance hybrid. But I think one of the things they've neatened up the looks a little bit. It's a very, very simple looking head. So there's nothing really massively distinguishing on the head there. You haven't got a line at the top of the crown into the face. It all kind of blends into one, which some players, that definition, which is why TaylorMade have put that line at the top of the face on, like to see that definition from an alignment point of view. But this is a very versatile head, one that definitely doesn't knuckle the flight off, definitely designed to retain a little bit of launch and spin. And so I think I just actually kind of forgot how good it was from that point of view. I think where we've seen a couple of other heads this year come into this kind of flight profile, your Ping flighting a little bit more, TSR2 flighting a little bit more, that Mizuno, the Mizuno 230, the STZ 230, keeps that little bit more spin onto it. This one, again, very, very neutral looking head, very kind of flat face actually visually, but does a good job for retaining some flight. Again, got a lovely sound off of it. It's got that little bit of a pop, little bit of a metallic note to it. So I sound like someone trying to describe wine. But it's got that little bit of a pingy sound off the face, which kind of feels like the ball comes off the face with a little bit of energy, and then that, that is important because it's a confidence element. But as we can see from that, it's back into that 14-degree launch, but the spin's up that little launch. So it's got a hair more spin than the Titleist head. I'll do one more there. A little bit lower on the face, maybe a little bit lower, a little heely. Yeah, so you can see spins up a little bit more. So for a player that struggles with spin, this is a great head. Again, it doesn't just pop it up, it's not high launching like TSR1, but gives a little bit more spin to it. And I think this is the kind of head where, a bit like the Mizuno, I think we're seeing more and more players being open to different brands, and maybe a brand that they might not have used in the past. Cobra with their bafflers have always been very good with hybrids. But this one, with that versatility of heel bias, toe bias, splitting the weights, using the loft sleeve to loft it up and down, actually, again, if you're looking for a bit of flight, and particularly retaining a good bit of spin to get that ball stopping control, very, very good head. So you're going to switch over to the Aerojet. So the past couple of models in this line have actually been absolute cannons. So the Rad Speed a couple of models ago was brutally low spin. I mean, which there were times where it was great, but there were times where it was prohibitively low spin. Actually, that model was. We just couldn't get enough flight on them, and then you don't really want to go masses of loft to get it launching miles in the air. However, if you're looking for a club just to get you some distance down the fairway and run like a scalded cat, it was a great head. The LTD from last year was a little bit less hard flight-wise, but similar, very, very strong. Aerojet, very, very similar look, actually very, very clean. They've gone back to that kind of lacquered finish on the top rather than matte, so you get a very different visual to it. Quite a clean shape, again, for a head which is really designed around, it's not designed for the Verticommer's better player. It's quite a compact shape, but again, historically, Cobra always have retained this kind of shape to it. So, yeah, but a little bit smaller than some. So Titleist have noticeably gone bigger. These guys have kept it nice and compact. So the Cobra are one where their shaft lengths are naturally a little bit longer. So their head weights are slightly lighter than some normally. So that's something to be aware when picking up, is that if you're not someone who likes long shaft lengths, the standard lengths on the Cobra Aerojet are going to be that little bit longer. So again, it's not a complicated job to shorten, and they have that weight in the back where you can alter the weight, or potentially if someone's got a glue gun, you can put a little bit of hot melt in just to weight the head up a little bit more to get that length down. But I'm expecting this to be quite a strong flight. So not quite the same sound off this. I got a little bit toe side, but for slightly toe side, we're back into, I mean, to have a 2 on the front of it on spin for a hybrid, we're into, the characteristics of this model over the years have retained. I mean, that's not hit, that's 5-6 miles an hour down on some of the other hybrids. That's still gone 245 in total, and I really slapped it. So very, very strong on spin. Got a reasonable, got enough launch to it, again, 14 odd launch, so it still picked it up fairly well. Get that a little bit better. Yeah, but this is back to being the Canon. This isn't, so you've got two quite extreme differences on spin profile. So what Cobra offer is a low spin bomber and an upper mid spin, softer flight, workable club head. So these really are, if you're looking for the strongest spin, if you're someone who really spins it, these are a great head. But there are going to be a lot of players who you're going to, well, if you put, for example, the 4 hybrid and play at 22 degrees, to compare it with the other heads, that thing's going off like an absolute gun. And the distance is going to be strong, but it's going to be at risk of it running out, maybe going too far relative to loft. So the key thing with this head is, if you're going to use the Aerojet head, it does it really, really, really well, but it is the lowest spin one we've hit by about 20%, which is a lot. So just be aware of that characteristic if you're looking at this head.
A question from Mr. Forbes. Do you guys have the Cleveland Highwood in your stock? From a few reviews I've seen, it gets very, very positive reviews, but doesn't seem to be promoted much.
Currently, no, and I think you're quite right. I mean, there's a little bit of, with Cleveland. So when obviously Srixon owned Cleveland, and Cleveland is very much more their price range brand. It's a more entry level price point. Obviously the wedges, Srixon don't do a wedge themselves. They own Cleveland, so Cleveland do great wedges. So that is their wedge range, and that's really where they're focusing most of the marketing on Cleveland. The woods are far from poor. However, one of the difficulties from the fitting standpoint is most of them are fixed. So they've gone for a very, very lightweight general kind of aim point with the Cleveland stuff in the driver and the fairways. But yeah, I mean, partly because, I mean, for us, one of our strengths is we've got all the brands, but one of the things that makes it difficult for a brand like Cleveland is it makes it hard for us to stock them because of how few people are going to want those versus, it's like me wearing a Ralph Lauren top. It's branding and feel good side of things. So where they can be good value, actually one of the heads we are really kind of going to have a look at and potentially look at whether to bring in is the new Wilson driver, because there's getting some really good noise about that. That looks to be a very, very good performer, and where prices have gone the last couple of years, there are drivers now. I'm going to focus on drivers because they're the bit that everyone talks about in the industry, but drivers now are up. It's hard to find one under £450 off the rack. Now, go back to the R7 TP that had a proper Diamana, and that was £500. And there's been the odd product that's kind of kicked up in price over the years, but now, Srixon Cobra a little bit less dear. You're looking at kind of low 400s for those, maybe 425, 430 as an off-the-rack product. But that's done. You put an aftermarket shaft in there, then you're very easily up at £700 to £800 for a top quality aftermarket shaft. Golf clubs have got very dear, and actually potentially an area where the likes of Cleveland have a really good role to play. And so for us, it's the balancing up of how many people are coming in here to get that product. We've stocked products like the Clevelands and the Wilsons in the past few years, and just haven't sold enough of them to make them really worth having the wall space. However, performance-wise, there could be a couple of products that we do bring in this year, particularly based on them working well, and that is one that we do have an eye on. So speaking of Srixon Cleveland, the Srixon, the ZX Mark II hybrid. Srixon over here are starting now to shout a little bit louder. So visually, that matte finish, very, very quite kind of simple kind of clean head shape. The irons are where Srixon have been really much better known the last few models. They've done a great job over the last 4, 5, 6 iterations of irons of progressing and really developing a really simple, clean but quality product lineup. The fairway wood's a real strong head, as you saw from our previous review. Almost like that Cobra Hybrid, almost maybe a little bit too strong for some players. But the performance on the wood side's starting to really. I say the catch up is maybe a little bit harsh on Srixon. They've had good performing product. They're just not really shouted about it much. So driver's very solid this year. Fairway wood's strong. Hybrid. The hybrid's always been quite a very kind of neutral head. So a bit like the Mizuno ones in the past. And no surprise that they're both Japanese products. They're very kind of mid-launch, mid-spin, all around solid. But have they outperformed other products for certain characteristics over the years? Probably not. Have been as good as, but not necessarily outperformed them. So we found a lot of people have gone into something that's either a little bit hotter for speed, a little lower spin, a little more distance, a little more height. And so I think that's kind of where we find these two sitting this year. The Srixon hybrids have strengthened up in performance the last couple of models in terms of, when I say strengthened up in terms of flight, a little bit stronger. And this one literally came in yesterday, so actually getting some numbers off it will be interesting to see how this performs relative to the sample we hit previously. Again, quite a compact fairly compact head shape, kind of heel to toe. So if you're not somebody who wants a big, cumbersome looking head, this is quite a neat shape. And actually a very, very clean, I'm going to put this back in front of camera, putting it down behind the book, it's a very, very clean square line on the top line there. When you put it down, that actually, whilst it's all black, you get a really, actually do get a bit of definition from an alignment point of view. So, you know, kind of a sort of a compact to mid-size head, again, will tend to suit someone kind of neutral to slightly more iron-like. But definitely for somebody who doesn't like a big hybrid head, a good head shape. Little low on the face, that'll spin. Yep, that's user error. Although what that does show is that this is a head that's not trying to take spin off. That one's near double the spin of the very well hit Cobra head. So if I can catch this middle of the face, that will actually help. Still a little bit lower on the face. I'm going to need one more just to do this head justice. This is me, not the club. But again, just shows, I mean, ball speed pretty good there. Just shows where it's not high launching, but it retains a bit of spin. So just see if I can, say, do the Srixon head justice here. That's a bit of a more solid hit. So, yeah, so up goes the launch, spin comes back down into that kind of very mid-launch, mid-spin kind of channel. Not going to be quite as hot in terms of ball speed as some of the others, but the upside of that is it's not going to get away from you. So I think there are going to be heads that players will find a little bit more forgiving. It'll feel a little bit easier. It'll feel like you've got a bit more face to get the ball off. But head-wise, again, visually, if you like the more compact head, this will suit. Again, if you're looking for a little bit of a mid-spin performance, solid head all round. I think it's a question of whether it does enough versus some of the other heads around to make good gains in terms of sales, but it's a solid product. And then the final one I got on the board here, got one of the PXGs. This is a Gen 5. Now they are shortly to be launching another, I believe, another model. There is another range coming. There's sort of some talk about coming. They tend to update every couple of years or so. So, you know, we're getting into that kind of time frame. A completely different visual. So obviously with that grey crown, grey part of the crown where they've gone the lighter material there, they're kind of showing you where they put a bit of tech in there. You know, the PXG hybrids have always been solid performers. And this one, it's quite a deep face. So this one's the XF, the slightly bigger of the two, but it's got quite a bit of depth to it. So again, the deeper you go, the more it tends to suit trapping and squeezing. It's got the, pull that back, I keep going back to camera, like the Cobra head, we've got the weights in the sole. So you can move the heavier weights around. It helps you control the head weight from a balance and a build point of view. That does help us from a versatility standpoint. And again, you can move the weight into the heel, the toe, the back, to optimize that general performance. The visual is polarizing and has been the last couple of years. You know, you do get, because of that grey line, you get quite a clean line at the back of the top line of the face that sits back a little bit from the face, can help alignment a little bit, but it is a look that is a Marmite kind of head. And to those, if we have anyone not from the United Kingdom watching, Marmite is a yeast-based product that has a very strong flavour that you love or hate. So, but performance-wise, the hybrid's always been very solid. A little bit lower on the face. Again, quite nice for one that wasn't struck that well. Really catchy. Felt like it retained ball speed well. It felt really balanced. Like when I said balanced behind the ball, I didn't feel the head deflect and distort particularly. And for that strike, retained spin well. So a little lower on the face, so it launched a bit lower. So I'll do one more there. So I've overcompensated on strike and gone a bit toey. So it's going to loop up and take a bit of spin off. I'll do that last one here just to get one representative. But yeah, I towed the heck out of that, so that's lost a load of ball speed. But again, you don't really notice the missed hit particularly on this head. It's a stronger hit, just came over it a little bit, but a stronger contact. So better strikes for me in that depth of head. Just pull that launch angle down a little bit. Spin lower mid. Spin stays in a pretty good place, but stability across the face very good. And actually, for how deep the face looks, normally when you get a face that deep, it can feel hard to get the weight into the bottom of the ball, but not so with this head at all. Really kind of nice, really nice across the face, and actually much more playable than it looks. So actually quite a versatile all-round club, decent ball speed, not too high a launch, but a nice spin profile. So actually one that there are quite a lot of players. It suits, as long as you're not a low ball hitter. That's a head that's certainly a good all-round product, good all-round performer. Just going to be the visuals. I think that some people are going to maybe not warm to, but good all-round product. I guess a bit like the driver and fairways. I think where we're at this year, and something that we've discussed in the fitting base, I think, is that we're in a year where there's just a lot of good product. There are a lot of good iron heads. There are a lot of good hybrids, fairways, drivers. It feels like we've got heads that we can find something for everybody. There are certain years where you kind of feel like, you know, the performance of the product is like hybrids in the past. I felt like everything's just canning everything low flat, low spin, distance oriented. You know, whereas this year you've got the you know, that section. You've got the Cobra, the King Tech. You've got the Mizuno head. You've got the TSR 1 and 2 that help a little bit of flight. That's something that we've really been missing. The Stealth 2 HD. That's one that really helps a little bit of flight too. That's something, yeah, we definitely missed the last couple of years. And I think the versatility of product within the hybrid range this year is as good as it's ever been. So from our point of view, fitting wise, that really, really helps.
Sorry about that little visual glitch. We lost the camera for a few seconds. A couple of questions here. Matt Batchelor, off topic from a fitter's perspective, what did you make of Rory's struggles to find a setup that works for him in the new TaylorMade driver? From a novice view, would last year's shaft not work in this year's model? But our fitter, Matt, has said, and maybe someone you could elaborate, this year's Stealth 2 is definitely lower spin than the Stealth. Rory being a high-speed, low-spin player, he is always going to struggle to keep the Stealth 2 in the air.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties, so the pros get given all their equipment and get paid, you know, someone like Rory gets paid a lot of money to use them, but he has to use the latest model 90% of the time. Occasionally he might get away in the transition period of keeping an old product if it worked really well, but ultimately he's got to use the new product. Now, if he had he clearly had a particularly good setup for original Stealth. And as Matt says, you know, the Stealth 2 Plus, which is the one that he plays, the Plus series, with the weight forward, is a little lower flighting, lower spinning, and particularly certain bits of the face. I mean, what happens every year, every kind of cycle and update of product, the geometry of the head changes. So center of gravity changes a little bit, which bit of the face performs particularly well for a certain player can move a little bit. So you can get a certain product really dialed in. Which he had the back end of last season. He was, you know, I mean, him and Rahm, the back end of last season were ridiculous. But what a shaft can't do is if you get a shaft working well, then what you're changing a shaft for, very, very slight changes in bend profile and feel, but really is about timing. So you tend to see a player, if they're struggling with a driver, they go searching around shafts for an answer. And most of the time will go back to one they've used in the past that worked well because it just moves well for them. You know, and that's ultimately, you can change bend profile, you can change kick point, but the physics of how you move that club from here and accelerate, the momentum gain and that leverage, a dead weight and a balance point will work for you because they just suit the way you move and develop your speed. And you can't make something work if that doesn't suit you. So if he's going searching for a shaft to fix a head problem, then he's throwing his timing off, and that then then that doubles up. So if he's struggling to flight the new head as well as the previous model, and he's looking for the shaft to fix it, then you're in double trouble because the head doesn't work as well and the shaft doesn't work as well. So, and this is going to be something that Rory will no doubt have some kind of prototype head engineered to make it work for him because they need it to work for him. You know, if he has a season like Dustin did a few years back, the sim worked really well for him, and then Sim 2 didn't work for him. Slight change in weight position, deeper weighting didn't suit him, and he kept missing everything left because of that new setup. And so that year you had Morikawa stayed in Sim, Dustin stayed in Sim, Casey stayed in Sim, Fleetwood stayed in Sim and didn't migrate to Sim 2. And I mean, if he can't make it work, then he'll just go back to original Stealth, because it's more important for him that he's winning tournaments, and they'll just have to find a way to make it work. But the structural changes from the heads can throw off whether that CG position and setup works for a player or not. And so his swing may not have changed, but certainly if he's fiddling around trying to find a setup that works, it's going to throw his confidence and timing off for sure.
Last couple of questions. We'll try and keep this to an hour and 15 for you guys. Thank you for
watching.
Sending them in. Niels, bag setup for woods and hybrids. You talked in the beginning about how that has changed the last few years. Could you elaborate a bit on what you see now typically above 5-iron and why?
So the biggest change, there are two main changes. The ball's got lower spin over the last 20 years, but the harder the ball's hit, the less it spins. So the more you get to the top end of the bag, proportionally that spin's going to degrade off a little bit more. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that iron lofts have got a lot stronger. So standard 6-iron back in the day, and the old days was 32 degrees. So when we started 19 years ago, 18, 19 years ago, it was, you didn't find a 6-iron, that many 6-irons under 30 degrees. And they were there, but they were the real distance clubs. And now you're rare to find a 6-iron over 30 degrees as standard. So 5-irons now where 4-iron loft was. And then you add in some of the tech on the heads that take spin off. You've now got a 5-iron that spins like a 3-iron. So that's one of the biggest reasons for change at the top part of the bag. Similar thing with woods, fairwoods, hybrids, the last few series, spins come down. So what we're seeing a lot more of is the need from a 5-iron as a sort of the longest iron. Again, go back, reason you're doing 5 to pitch and an approach wedge is because your 5-iron's 3.5-iron loft. So the approach wedge, 5 to approach is basically old 3-iron to pitch wedge lofts. So that has to be taken into account. But we're doing more hybrids and lofted woods because of the need to get the ball airborne to keep it in the air. So driver lofts, maybe people playing a little bit more loft. Fairway woods, we're doing many more forward 7-wood hybrid 5-iron. Because again, we need the loft to get the ball airborne, and that's really the simplest part of it. It's nothing more than, I think the ball's driven it in particular. As the ball lost spin, the more important, as I said, the more important, if you haven't got spin, the more important launch angle is. If you have spin, you don't need the launch angle. So, but most players swing a driver at 90 to 95 miles an hour. So your fairway wood and hybrids are going to be 85 miles an hour. The pros hit their 6-irons at 95 miles an hour. So they generate the spin because of the club speed, whereas your average club player has say an 85, maybe 90 mile an hour fairway with a hybrid swing. There's not that friction to get and speed to naturally get the spin. So you've got to have the launch angle if you're not going to have the spin. So hybrids and lofted woods and the combinations of clubs we're using now are really down to that, the lack of spin on the ball and the need to get it airborne more. And a hybrid will get it more airborne than an iron, and a fairway wood at the same loft will get it more airborne more quickly than a hybrid. So that's what we're seeing the most change from. I think that answered it.
Okay, and a question, more of a statement really, but obviously this is a live review, so time is limited, but DHY style heads.
Yep.
They seem to be a halfway house between irons and hybrids and are consequently missed off both sets of reviews. Your thoughts really on DHY, so that chunky style driving iron?
Yeah, I mean, I would put that more into the driving iron, and that's something we'll look at. We'll do another review on driving irons. But the DHY, it's a hybrid iron, very much that, or an iron hybrid, depending which way you want to look at it. So it's really the hybrid heads, the rescue heads we're looking at today are more heads that you'd use to avoid using an iron. You're trying to move away from an iron head. The DHY is a very forgiving iron head. It's got a little bit of composite, a little bit of material tech in it, but that would fall into when we look at the driving irons. There are different styles that will perform differently on those, and we will do one of those. But yeah, I mean, they have a merit for, again, you can go shorter on shaft length. the iron style head allows someone to trap it a bit more. So if you tend to get a little bit more on top and hit a kind of a trappy fade, then shorter shaft length helps to square the face a bit more easily. But they really, again, they'll control spin and keep spin down a little bit more than these heads as well. So again, it's trajectory base and shaft length base, but they're very much a forgiving iron head, which is why they don't fall into a hybrid category.
And finally.
Hi
guys, am I right that OEM hybrid shaft weights have decreased over the years? Would you agree, and would you say it's a swing speed thing for general consumers, or are there other factors involved?
Absolutely correct. Average hybrid shafts off the rack were always of 80-85 grams, and that's actually pretty lumpy. There was the odd one at maybe 75, but it was 75 through 90. I mean, Titleist in one of those, they have a 100-gram option, but generally, 75 to 90. We're now seeing more kind of 50 through to 80. There's still some 80-85-gram ones. But yeah, I think because it is a swing speed thing. Broadly speaking, lower club speed, lighter weight to gain speed. Lighter weight helps to get the club head through to get more airborne. The lighter weight's softer, so you get a bit more kick of the shaft. It helps just to get a little bit more ball flight. So those are very much the reasons for it. And you're doing more hybrids to replace long irons now. Some of the hybrid used to be almost more of a fairway wood replacement many years back, whereas now it's very much a long iron replacement. And fairway woods have come back into the fore from a flight point of view. So I think we're seeing much more catering to the average golfer, actually, rather than the stronger golfer, the 85 grams for the stronger golfer. And there are some down at kind of 45, 50 grams as options now. So yeah, very much kind of all of the above. Just help with a bit of flight, help with a bit of club speed, and just make them more playable. Make them easier to use. That bit of the bag is all about making the game a little bit easier. So those are all the reasons. But thank you very much to everyone for watching.
No other questions. Just from a technical standpoint, I'm doing my best to learn little different tricks of the trade with OBS Studio. You may have noticed I learnt how to put the hybrid head description at the top of the screen now. So if there's any other things you'd like to see me learn to do, please do just put a comment in the video after this, and I'll get my dummy's guide out.
You definitely want James doing it. You don't want me anywhere near a computer for that stuff. So that's why I stand this side. But thank you again for watching. As I say, any ideas on things you want us to cover, any questions, any comments, please just send them in. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, hit the bell button, follow the channel. We continue to try and grow the content and do as much as possible to help you guys as much as possible to understand the labyrinth that is club fitting. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope the weather improves to get out on the course a little bit, and we look forward to seeing you next time.